Now, chapter 15, you don't even really need like your own video for it, but I'm just gonna like kind of briefly describe like how it's set up. Because it literally is just like an accumulation of like all the most important notes that we've already gone over from the other chapters. It's like your cheat sheet chapter. And I even like bolded the stuff that's most important. So like, first of all, the general strategies, like if you have to pick from anything, this part is the most important out of the whole entire chapter 15 grammar notes section. Because like your timing strategy, for instance, if you don't follow your timing strategy, like what's the point? Like you could spend like 15 minutes on one question and then like not even get to the other questions because you're not keeping track of time. Read two sentences above and below. That's just because it applies to so many different grammar rules that like I would just do it all the time, because 99% of students can't determine like when is the best time to read two sentences above and below and when is not. So if you just do it throughout and get used to that, then you're covered on all bases instead of having to learn a bazillion different rules about when to do it and when not to do it. And then it's so important, it's not like it's just applying to like one thing. It applies to so many different grammar rules that it's like you should just do it. And then the importance of context. Remember, like almost every single grammar rule in this book, it boils down to context and like what are they talking about, like subject verb agreement. We talked about like the pronoun agreement, like all types of agreement have to do with context. Like whether you add or delete something has to do with the context, whether it's like related to the topic and like, or if it's completely irrelevant, like that sort of thing. There's so many rules that have to do with context. So remember, don't just look, and that kind of goes also with the two sentences, reading two sentences above and below the underlined portion thing, because you can't just go off of the sentence in isolation, because there could be other stuff in the paragraph that makes the sentence wrong. So like even if you could write the sentence by itself correctly, it might be wrong just because it's in that specific paragraph. Like for instance, if the entire paragraph is recounting a story in past tense, like a story in the past, and then they all of a sudden use present tense in one sentence, that sentence might read totally normally if it wasn't within that paragraph where everything is being talked about in the past. So in that paragraph, it would be wrong to use present tense for that one sentence, even though if you just took out that one sentence, it sounds correct. So you have to be aware of the context. I also put this one up here, but this one's more, I think, helpful for reading, the reading section, but the main idea, goal, purpose, I've already talked about this. And if you want to like hear these again, like just go to the specific chapter that like the title goes with and just have me like, I've gone over all these notes already, like in the summaries at the beginning of each of the chapters. So go back to those videos if you need to. And then, so look at the answer choices, see what skill is being tested. Again, that's like a big one that's like really helpful. That can save you a lot of time. And then in one thing that this is like the most important, which is why I underlined it, thing out of everything, the number one issue I see with students is them being like, I picked this because it sounds right. But that's the whole point. They're making things sound right. And that's the biggest way, like to get into trouble on these exams, is to just go off of what you hear, because they're writing it to trick you because they think you're going to do that. So don't pick something just because it sounds right. You have to be thinking, okay, I'm picking this because it's going with this specific comma rule. Like there should be commas around this because it's a non-essential clause. Like I can cross out the information in between. So it's a non-essential clause. So there should be a comma around each side of that non-essential clause. Like you have to be justifying why you're picking something, not just picking it because it's like, that sounds right. Don't do that. And then like there's all the other stuff. Again, I bolded the stuff that I would say is like the most important to remember, or like what I think would be the most likely that you're tested on. So like it, just in case you have this like right before you're going into the exam, like the stuff in bold is what I would focus on the most if you're limited on time. But that's not to say that the other stuff isn't important. And I didn't include like every single note from every single chapter. Like I didn't include like all the charts of pronouns and stuff like that, like because most people already know that, and you could just go back to that specific chapter if you had trouble on those quizzes to review that extra information in the notes section. This would be the stuff that I would say is most helpful and shows up most frequently on exams, and that's why I included it in this chapter. So that is it.